you have a first aid kit in your RV? Do you even know what's in it? We did not have a first aid kit in our RV. And guess what? It almost cost me my life. When I got sick, a friend came over with a pulse ox, and that's when Patty called 911. I'm Dan Hunt with my incredible wife, Patty Hunt, and this is the RV Life Podcast.
We now have a full first aid kit in our RV, and I am certainly sleeping better because of it.
I think I'm sleeping better. At least I'm sleeping now, because I don't think if I didn't get to the hospital, I'd be around today.
No, probably not. But today we are in Florida where the sun is warm and the water is beautiful, and we're feeling great.
You know how great we feel. Yesterday, we rented a boat and went out on the river, out to the Gulf of Mexico, and we just had the best time that you could possibly have.
It was so nice. We saw manatees, we saw dolphin, which was unusual. Lots of birds, just so serene and so beautiful. That'll certainly put some years on your life.
You know, we did a video. It's up on Exploring Through Our Land. That's our YouTube channel. Head over to that and check it out. Just some incredible stuff.
I'd like to talk today about our fun fact. How many injuries occur every year while camping?
Patty, I did a lot of research on this one, and the best I could come up with, there are 11,000 reported, responded to injuries in campsites and campgrounds around the country each year. Now, that number seems a little bit low to me.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. Now, in further researching, we did see that there are an estimated 3 times as many injuries that go unreported. That number seems a little more realistic to me.
Now, heart attacks account for 17% of the calls out to camping and campgrounds and that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of other things, too.
Right. Well, snake bites, which I don't even want to think about. Dehydration and heat exhaustion. I know Dan and I once took a hike and we were definitely dehydrated. We definitely had heat exhaustion. And we didn't report it, probably should have. But things like sprains and broken bones and all kinds of stuff that could possibly go wrong.
And all of these things that we're talking about, that is why it is so important to have a proper first aid kit and know what to do with it. Our guest today is an expert. He's so much of an expert. He's got more letters after his name than you can possibly imagine. And we'll be back with him right after this.
This RV Life podcast is sponsored in part by Clear 2O. Clear 2O continues to bring its expanding line of water filtration products to RVers with innovations such as their DirtGuard sediment pre-filter, their 1-micron solid carbon block inline water filter, and a wide variety of high-quality filters for your RV's whole house filter system. When it comes to clean water for your RV life, the answer is clear. Clear 2O. Visit clear20.com and use the coupon code RVLifePodcast to save an additional 5% on every purchase.
This is the RV Life Podcast. I'm Dan Hunt with my incredible wife, Patty Hunt. And our guest today has been a certified critical care nurse for over 30 years, a flight RN for over 15 years, flown over, get this, 2.5 million. That's right. I said 2.5 million miles on missions. And if that's not enough, he's earned 14 letters after his name.
We're talking today to Bob Bacheler, Managing Director of Flying Angels. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Patty. Hi, Dan. It's good to be here.
Bob, I have known you for many, many, many years. And today we're talking about first aid kits and what do we really need on board our RV? So my first question is to you. Do I really need a first aid kit on my RV?
Absolutely, Dan. Absolutely. You want to be prepared using the old Boy Scout motto there. for, minor emergencies and, even major medical emergencies. You just want enough equipment to buy you time to make the decisions, decide what you're going to do, decide if you can take care of the situation there, or if you need to go on and get medical help. But yes, you absolutely want to have a first aid kit handy at all times when traveling.
Today, we're looking to talk about the essentials. So let's talk about, do we need, say, a pulse ox, a BP cuff, those kinds of things?
When you start talking about getting into, medical supplies, that's an interesting question. Now, one of the things I was going to mention is that I happen to think that a pulse oximeter is probably one of the most useful gadgets that we have in the medical profession. They used to be hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and we kept them under lock and key. But now you can go on Amazon and buy a pulse oximeter for $25. Now, for those people who aren't familiar with what a pulse oximeter does, is it measures the amount of oxygen that's in your blood, and it can also measure your pulse. So, when I'm presented with a medical emergency, probably one of the first things that I'm doing, as I'm saying hello, is putting a pulse oximeter on somebody. It is just going to give me a multitude of information. Now, for the layperson, it can kind of give you a baseline. So we can go into details about what it'll tell you, what it won't tell you. But no, it's a terrific tool to have in everyone's kit, and I would recommend everybody have one.
I know that the last several years of COVID, it's really been more important than ever to know if your pulse ox is too low. And again, we can talk more about what that looks like. How about a BP cuff? Is that something you would recommend?
They're a mixed blessing. The problem with anything that gives you numbers is you have to be able to step back and look holistically and say, what do those numbers mean? If you put a blood pressure on somebody and their blood pressure is, say, 90/50, which for normal people is low, in lack of other context that may not be telling you anything, you really need to know what the baseline of the person is. So, as I used to tell my students when I was teaching, is you don't get wrapped up in the number. Make sure you're assessing the patient. Now, the pulse ox, a little bit different. There are numbers. If the oxygen saturation is below 90, you may have a problem. But one of the other things a pulse ox that can tell you is what the patient's pulse is. I can't tell you how many times I've been in codes, where we're doing CPR on somebody, and you've got 4 different people looking for a pulse on somebody, and you're going to get 4 different answers. Well, a simple pulse oximeter is going to give you a reasonably good idea of what somebody's pulse is. Is it 60? Is it 160? That in combination with the oxygen saturation, is it 70? Is it 100? And again, one of the things about pulse ox is, that lay people need to understand is if you put it on somebody, just because you get a number doesn't mean that you're getting useful information. So it's a combination of, are you getting a good pulse reading? And does that number correlate to what's going on with the patient? So again, all of these devices are terrific and helpful. But again, they need to be in the context of what's going on with the patient. There's no single device that'll provide you with all the information you need. When I started 30 years ago, we used to put heart catheters in every patient in the ICU, and we would get all kinds of numbers. Well, over the years, we've kind of come to the realization that, we had all these numbers, but they really weren't providing information that was leading to better patient outcomes. So again, the key is always focus on the patient, focus on what's going on with the patient. Don't get wrapped up with the numbers. Numbers are a nice adjunct. They kind of help you out and maybe give you a little bit more information, but they're not something that you should rely on.
Bob, let's go back to the pulse ox for a second. And it's one of my favorite things because I really feel that maybe your training, and again, for those of you that don't know, Bob and Patty and I have known each other for, let's say, 30 years. We've been friends for a very, very long time. and we spend a lot of time with each other. But when I had a very, very difficult situation, I want to talk about two things here with the pulse ox. The numbers that you see, and sometimes you have to put it on two different fingers. You might want to get a reading and then put it on the other hand on the other side. But what is a number that you say, okay, warning, Will Robinson, we've got a problem here. We need to take action. Is that number 90? Is it 95? Is it 80? Or in my case, like 60? Let's talk about, actions to take when you see those numbers.
Well, to keep it simple, if you're at 95 or above, you're usually fine. Some people run 100% normally. Other people tend to run 97% normally. Others will run 96. Elderly people who have some pulmonary disease may run 92 or 93 just as a baseline. So if you're trying to fix them better than the baseline, you're kind of pushing a string uphill. Now, as a general rule with somebody who is otherwise healthy, things start to get bad at 90. And then they get really progressively worse when you drop from there. In other words, again, at the risk of oversimplification, 85 is twice as bad as 90. 80 is 10 times as bad as 85 because the body has certain coping mechanisms to deal with low oxygen saturation. But as that oxygen is deprived to the body loses its ability to compensate and things get bad quickly. So to answer your question is, above 90 is okay.
The next thing that I would say in this, and again, it's part of what saved my life, is when you see a bad number, when you see something in the 80s or 70s, or in my case, in the 60s, panic. Mm-hmm. A lot of people panic and some things just don't go right. But talk about the importance of staying calm and reading what's around you the way Patty did, that probably saved my life.
Well, nothing is going to go well if you start to panic. What you'll often find, for those people who happen to work in trauma, is things just get remarkably calm and professional. The worst things get is when somebody is starting to deteriorate, what you'll notice are the professionals are the ones who are calming down and slowing down. Again, when I was teaching my students, one of the things I would tell them is, that moment where you call a code on a patient is actually a very stress relieving moment, because once that happens, you pretty much know what's going to happen. You know what the algorithms say, you know what the procedures say. It's when that patient is deteriorating and you don't know why the patient is deteriorating, that's where the anxiety comes in. And that's where the point is: stay calm and, get the help that you can. I think in your case, Patty was smart enough to that's when you call EMS. And EMS comes in and they have a certain set of tools that they can use to stabilize you and move you. And then they get you to the hospital and they'll take you in the ER, where they have another set of tools where they can stabilize you. And, for those people who are in car accidents or sustain significant injuries, then they'll take you to the OR, where they have more tools to stabilize you and do what they need to do. So kind of each step along the way, you're hopefully going to a place that has the tools needed to fix whatever problems that you may have. In the hospital, you may go into the regular floor, where, again, they can provide a certain level of care. If that's not enough, they'll move you to telemetry, where they can provide you with more care. And then if needed, you're going to go into the ICU, where they can provide more care. So there's no place other than the ICU, that has everything. That's going to have all the tools you need.
Great information. I think that a lot of what we're looking for here, and we're going to talk a little more about when do I call in a professional. So from what I'm hearing, some of these tools, the pulse ox, the BP cuff, some of them are necessary and helpful, and some of them may not be. So, and we have to take those numbers with a grain of salt. Let's talk a little bit. Those of us that live in an RV, one of the big things is sometimes a fall. So whether you're taking a hike, whether you're on top of your RV and you take a fall, what are some of the immediate things to do? And, what are some of the things we might need in a first aid kit that would help?
The first thing you're going to want to do if you fall is you're going to have to assess what the injury is. Do we have, a simple muscular tear? Did somebody take a step wrong and sprain their ankle? Which could be fixed, relatively easy, with an ACE wrap, or did they wind up falling off their RV and breaking a bone? In which case, then you need to seek medical attention. Ideally, what somebody would do is you can splint the injured limb, and that's to prevent more damage from happening. If you break a bone in your leg, that's bad. But if that break tears an artery, then you're facing a very, very significant life-threatening event that can happen very quickly. So, the goal is, once you fall, to see what are we looking at? Do we see, a limb that is bent in a position that it just should not be? Do we see an exposed bone? Called a compound fracture. All of these, you make an assessment and then you decide that, okay, we're going to stabilize it as best we can and then seek out that first level of medical care. If it is faster to get somebody to a hospital, if you're in a remote location at a campground, it might just be better to get in the RV or get in the car and get to the nearest medical facility directly, rather than trying to wait for what might be limited EMS options to come out and get you.
Just real quick. Number one, don't panic. That's the big thing here.
Don't panic.
Falling is a big thing around campgrounds, from the top of an RV, off of a ladder, kids falling off the back of a rock. Can you talk a little bit about there's times where it's a great idea to just get somebody in the back of the car and go, but there's also times that you probably don't want to move somebody. What are the indicators that would say to somebody that, I really don't think we should move this person right now?
Well, the first and foremost is going to be if there's a suspicion or a concern that there was a spinal cord injury or if there was a neck injury. This is one of the reasons that at every single swimming pool that you see, they will have backboards, those large boards that they'll put somebody on, and they'll have neck braces to make sure that you're stabilizing somebody's injury. If somebody has a cervical injury, an injury of the neck, the first thing that you want to make sure you do is that you stabilize them. There was a football game the other day, and one of the players got injured, and they brought on the board, and they strapped him down on the board. They put a collar around his neck, stabilized his head, and took him off to the hospital. Anytime there's even the question or the possibility of a spinal cord injury, you want to stabilize that, because the injury, itself, may be transient, but moving the person around after that can cause a lot more damage, than the injury itself. So they want to be stabilized. This is very common with pool injuries. This is very common with diving injuries. Unfortunately, when people are out in a strange area and there's a pond or a lake and they don't know how deep it is, never, ever, ever jump headfirst into a body of water that you don't know how deep it is ever. That's just a simple and absolute safe rule, be it a pool or be it a lake or a pond.
I want to talk a little bit about, in the RV world, for those of us like Patty and I are full timers or a lot of boondockers, you're really away out in the middle of nowhere. I know there was a time that we were in Red Rock Canyon and a woman actually fell off the side of the trailhead. But you always feel bad about calling, like, are they going to send a helicopter out here? Blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Let's talk a little bit about that decision to move somebody and get them down the hill or call somebody. And I guess when I learned about this stuff very early on in my career, it was don't make the situation worse by trying to get the person out. So can you talk just a little bit about that?
Well, that's the first question you have to answer. And, what you're going to want to do is if somebody is in a situation where you can't get them out easily, the first question is, are they in distress? If they're not in any life-threatening distress at the moment, we're going to go back to Patty's comment of just don't panic. And then we're going to figure out, what's the next step. In many cases, what'll happen, just like the hospital scenario, that, maybe there'll be a park ranger who will come out, maybe local forest services, or maybe even, local police, and they'll make a decision as to what is needed, and it'll be escalated up the chain. You as a layperson are not going to call for an aeromedical evac to come in and get that. That needs to be done by the local authorities, and they will make that decision based upon the situation, where the patient is, is it needed? Is it better to just get the person out by ground? But the first question you want to ask is the patient stable? Are they in any critical life-threatening danger at the moment, at the time?
We talked a lot about the bigger type of tools and the bigger type of injuries, and we are going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to get into all things first aid kit. When traveling in your RV, how do you navigate? Do you use a paper map, a GPS, or do you use Google Maps? Our sponsor, RV Trip Wizard, has the solution, and it just works.
It just works. We do not move 1 inch in our RV without first putting it in RV Trip Wizard. If you want to get more information about it, check out the show notes below, because guess what? Everything that you could want about RV Trip Wizard is in that information, and you have a discount code down there.
Yes, RV Trip Wizard is amazing. And let's get back, Bob, from Flying Angels. Tell us a little bit about the service that you provide, because we know of RVers that absolutely could use Flying Angel services.
What we do at Flying Angels is we have doctors and nurses, all critical care ICU level providers around the country, who fly with people who have medical needs on the commercial airlines like Delta, American, United. I'm flying out tomorrow to Germany to bring a young woman who had a traumatic brain injury back to the U.S. We have nurses flying patients, elderly folks who have dementia domestically, from Florida up to New York and all across the country. We do a lot of spinal cord injury patients, unfortunately, the ones we were talking about earlier, to the big spinal cord rehabilitation hospitals around the country, so they can get the rehabilitation care they need. We're a non-emergency service. We are a fee for service business. Our goal is to transport people who have medical needs but don't need the ICU level of care of a private jet around the country. And again, transporting somebody with a medical professional on a commercial airline is a fraction of the cost of putting them on a private jet.
Well, I hope none of the RVers listening ever need your service. But if they do, certainly an amazing company with amazing people. So glad that it is available.
I just want to take a second and clarify a little bit and put it into the RV world. if you live in an RV, full-time, part-time, doesn't matter. You're out in the boondocks, you're anywhere. Let's say you're at a national park and in Colorado, and you live in Los Angeles and you take a fall. You're in a hospital and they get you all cleaned up and all set up. Flying Angels can then get you back with supervised medical care to your own doctors and hospital. Did I describe that right, Bob?
Yeah, that's actually a terrific explanation of it. And in many cases, we transport RVers, frequently, even folks who are full time, in many cases, if they have an injury or, have a stroke or heart attack or any of the other number of myriad things that can happen, they're probably going to want to be around family. Rather than being in some remote small town hospital. So that's where we would come in and fly them. In several cases, when we have an elderly couple, we'll bring the person to the area where their family is, while the other person is driving the RV back to where they're going to be or where their family is. So that makes life a lot easier on everybody.
Absolutely. So now I just want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the basic things that people need in the first aid kit. Obviously, the Band-Aids and the antiseptic. What else do you suggest? I know we talked about on Amazon, there's 100 different first aid kits. What's the recommendation?
Well, I always believe that the best first aid kit is the one that you happen to have with you. That's really the way to go. If you happen to have an RV and you want to buy a larger kit that has all the bells and the whistles and the trauma shears, and 5 different types of gauze and 3 different types of wraps and all these other cool tools, that's great. The trick is going to be, when you need it, do you have it? Now, if you're out hiking, perhaps a very small kit that just has what you need. One of the keys, if you have a cut, you have a decision point. Is this a cut that you can just perhaps put some steri strips on, put a Band-Aid on, clean out and put a little triple antibiotic on? You want to make sure that you keep that cut clean. Again, the cut's bad, but the infection can be far worse. So ideally, you have a kit that's got a little antiseptic, little alcohol, little triple antibiotic ointment. Wrap it up, put it on there, and you're good to go. The question is going to be: is it a cut deep enough that you're going to need medical attention? Is it going to need sutures? Or is it something you just put some steri strips on? One of the things people don't realize about sutures is it often prevents scarring. In other words, if you have a reasonably deep cut and you just try to Band-Aid it, well, yes, it'll probably heal, but it's going to leave a nasty scar. So again, your basic kit, you're going to want to have something that's got some antiseptic, some Band-Aids, some dressings. And something to wrap it up with. I recommend, people have emergency blankets in their kits. Mylar blankets are something that are terrific for thermal injuries. If somebody gets cold, hot and cold compresses, they're terrific to have. They'd be something that you'd want probably in your RV kit. Maybe not when you're hiking, but when you're hiking, you probably want to have some ACE wraps or ACE bandages in the event that you take a fall and sprain a limb. You want to make sure you wrap it up. So it's really a matter of just have as much as you can carry with you. Again, RV, have a bigger kit. Out hiking, take a smaller kit with you. Something just to take care of those little emergencies. One of the things you want to watch out for when you're out hiking, are snake bites, spider bites, and unless you're a real wilderness expert, you're probably going to want to seek medical attention, if you get bitten by something that you don't know what it is. one of my advices for all RVers is get a rabies vaccine. This is, while not terribly common here in the U.S. One of the things that people don't realize that if you get a rabies vaccine in advance of an exposure, the treatment is a lot easier than it is if you have not been vaccinated for rabies. If you're not vaccinated for rabies and you get bitten by an animal that you suspect could possibly maybe have rabies, you definitely a number of shots that you're going to want to get after that. But it's much easier if you've been vaccinated. So again. But even if you get bitten, you're going to want, clean dressings. You're going to want to wash out the wounds. You're going to want to, put some antibiotic ointment on it. Just even if these are just stopgap measures, and then wrap it up. Prevent the injury from becoming worse. Are the things that you want in your portable kit. Now, you mentioned the pulse ox and the blood pressure cuff. Well, they're probably not bad items to have in your larger, kit in your RV. In that go bag that if you hear an emergency, you grab it and you go. But I would also recommend, if you have a big kit, familiarize yourself with it and kind of know what's in there. In our world, all of our nurses pack their own kits. In other words, we have the standard list of supplies that we want everybody to have. But one of the things that we insist on is that everybody packs their own kit. So in an emergency, when you need something, where it is. If we pack a kit for somebody, and they're like, okay, great, I've got my kit. Well, what happens, if the lights are out or you're in a bad situation and you want to know where your flashlight is? Again, flashlights are something that you should have in your kit. Now, fortunately, most people's phones are now, now have a flashlight function that you can use. But most of the kits I have one of those headlamps on them. So, if I'm on an aircraft, I can sit there and put my headlamp on and I can see what's going on. That's a terrific thing to have. I always recommend things like gloves. If you buy a pre-made kit, just make sure they've got gloves in them.
No, Bob, one of the things that you and I did last week is we sat down and looked at a couple different kits, and I'm going to put links and pictures of those kits up on our Instagram page and the RV Life Podcast Facebook page. Now, we are not affiliates. Bob's not an affiliate. Patty and I are not affiliates of these kits. We just went through and we looked at a kit that, I don't want to call it the economy kit, but there's a kit that's about $35. It has just about everything that you need in it. And then if you like to be an over type person, there's a $135 kit that has everything, plus the headlight flashlight in there as well. So just take a look at those. And those are on our social media, as well as a link to Bob's website and all of those things.
A lot of great information today, and we probably could expand it longer, but first of all, I just want to sum up. Don't panic. That's number one. Assessing the situation, being prepared, having what you need in a first aid kit. All of these things is just absolutely essential. So thank you, Bob, for that great information.
Can I throw in one last piece here, if I may? Hydrate. There are so many injuries, that we see in the ER that come in are just a matter of dehydration. And, we're talking to RVers who may be out on the trail, who are out there hiking away and they're sweating and they're just not drinking enough, especially with older populations. Lack of hydration can really manifest itself as, almost as severe as a stroke. But so make sure that you tell your listeners, just hydrate. I come from the aviation world. We're just making sure somebody has enough liquids is just the golden rule. That's number one. That would be my my biggest piece of advice.
Bob, that is a great point. And I'm going to just put you on the spot a little bit here because we didn't talk about this. We didn't prep for this, but let's talk a little bit, or can you give the listeners a little tip on if you do find yourself, like Patty and I one day went out for what was supposed to be a 2-mile hike. 9 miles later, we're in the middle of nowhere and we don't know how to get back. And we were out of water. And it was about 102 degrees. So we had a real problem out there. If you do get dehydrated, if you're, not hydrated, what is some of the best steps to take to get out of that situation quickly?
If I go back to my old Boy Scout training, you're going to want to find water, and hopefully, if you're looking for water, make sure it's flowing water. If there's a river or a stream nearby, if the water is flowing, it's usually safe. You don't want to find a stagnant pool. That's where bacteria can go. That's where you can have other growths. But just find water as fast as you can. If you want to be prepared, there's any number, and perhaps something you want to put in your portable kit if you're going to go out hiking. They make these straws that you can use that will decontaminate water, from a potentially polluted source. But you're far better off just finding a stream nearby where you can get some water from.
Bob, thank you so much. I know our listeners really appreciate all this information because it's something for us that are out on the road we really need to think about all the time. You're listening to the RV Life Podcast. I'm Dan Hunt with my incredible wife, Patty Hunt, and we will be back right after this.
National Indoor RV Centers with over 1,000 motorhomes available across multiple locations. National Indoor RV Centers continues to provide an outstanding hassle-free motorhome ownership experience. National Indoor is the #1 Newmar dealer in the nation and also features brands like Integra, Winnebago, and much more. Visit NIRVC.com and become a part of the National Indoor RV Centers family.
This is the RV Life Podcast. I'm Dan Hunt with my incredible wife, Patty Hunt. And Patty, before we get going here a little more, let's talk a little bit more about our friends over at National Indoor.
And boy, do they really feel like our friends. We met Marshall, and he's at the location in D.C. We've talked to Chuck and Brett, who is the owner, and we can't wait to meet Angie at the Tampa RV show.
Yeah, they are hosting us in the AIM tent. We're going to be doing our podcast live every single day from the Tampa RV Super Show from the AIM tent. We're going to do it at 1 o'clock every day. We're going to do it live on Facebook, and then it'll post up on all your favorite podcast channels.
Now, if you want to join us, come over to the AIM tent. All are welcome. Just check the event schedule to find out where we're located. Would love to have you in the audience.
We have a lot of great guests lined up for this show, including the owner, CEO, creator of National Indoor RV Centers. I just love him. He is just amazing. You're going to want to hang around for that because these people have come up with a concept like no other. And it is just really, really great.
So now let's talk about what an amazing interview with Bob. He gave so many tips. Now, Bob and I and Dan, we've all been friends for a long time. And Bob kind of gives us some of our tips and tricks. But there were things that he talked about in that interview that really helped us to add even more to our first aid kit.
Yeah, Bob, you cost me a little bit of money, but that's okay because the information that you put out there is absolutely essential to everyone. And talk about essential, I think right now it's time for the RV Life Pro Tip of the Week with Patrick Buchanan.
RVers love to find great RV parks and campgrounds and add them to their favorites listing on RV Life Campground Reviews. Now, as an RV Life Pro subscriber, you can create a basic RV trip by using one of your favorites list right from the Campground Reviews website. First, head over to campgrounds.rvlife.com and add your favorite RV parks or campgrounds to a favorites list. Now, order those favorites the way you want them and hit the Create Trip button. All of those campgrounds are instantly added to a new trip in the RV Life Trip Wizard. Note that you must be logged in to RV Life Campground Reviews with your Trip Wizard login, but that's it. Of course, once you're in Trip Wizard, you can reorder the stops, change the dates, and the number of nights you're staying, just like any other trip. I'm Pat Buchanan with your RV Life Pro Tip of the Week.
I have to tell you that we have been using RV Trip Wizard for over 2 years. We had it before we even started RVing. And this tip is one that we were not even familiar with. So thank you, Patrick. This is going to be one we are going to be using.
You know, we even kind of were suggesting, wow, wouldn't it be nice, at least to Patty and I inside, wouldn't it be nice if we could like add a list of our favorite places so we don't forget them? How many times have you gone to a campground and said, wow, this place was great, I want to come back here, and then you never do because you forgot? But now RV Trip Wizard has it all done with you. And that is just a great thing. So we're going to move into what we call our question of the week right now. But before we do that, I just want to say that if you have a question about RVing or RV life or anything, camping, anything like that, shoot on over to our social media. We're on Facebook, the RV Life Podcast. We're on Instagram, the RV Life Podcast. Put your question in there. Tell us that you have a question, and hopefully we can get a hold of you, and you could be our next question asker.
Okay, so today's question is from Ainsley, who is from Kentucky. And this is a great question that I didn't think about.
Hi, guys. My name is Ainsley. I'm from Kentucky, and I'm also a full-timer. And my question is, what do you guys do about pet care and finding veterinarians while you're on the road?
Thank you, Ainsley. What a great question. Now, Dan and I do not travel with any pets, but I'm sure those of you who do are wondering, what do you do with your pet when you need a vet on the road? And we have some answers for you.
You know, the first thing that everybody, I guess, should think about is when you pull into a area or a campground, look up who not just the vets are, but who the ER vets are in the area that you're in, because it's going to be really important to have an ER vet, because a lot of vets don't take new patients in. So it's important to have somebody that will take you when you need them.
Right. And of course, you should make sure you have all of your pets' paperwork, their vaccinations, everything handy and with you, because if there is an emergency on the road, you need to be able to grab those and go. Even doing it electronically, so it's always on your phone, is probably a good idea. But, you know, just being prepared, I guess, is the best thing.
And the other thing or last thing is you should probably have a talk with your personal or home-based vet about your lifestyle. And if you're just a weekender, well, tell them that you go out for the weekends and you go out in the woods. If you're a full-timer, it's probably a little more important to have a relationship with your home vet so they know that you're out on the road, and they may get a call from an ER vet wherever you are. Hopefully that will never happen. So thank you, Ainsley, for not only giving us a great question this week, but her and Craig, they're the ones that took us out on the boat. And you know what? We had a great time. You do want to go over to our YouTube channel and check out what we did here in Crystal River, Florida.
Yes. And now let's talk a little bit about, you know, we talk about your pet and making sure they're healthy, but we have to give a shout out to our friend Minette, who brought us over that pulse ox that literally saved Dan's life. His pulse ox was so low that I had to call an ambulance. So having, again, all of his papers and his information, knowing where you are and how to get to emergency help is really important as we travel around the country.
You know, and that kind of does go back to something that Phil and Stacy of You Mean the RV or Today is Someday, I'm not sure which one they are right now, but they kind of have this form that they keep on their refrigerator or in the inside of one of their cabinets. And when they pull in to a campground, they fill out that form so they know where the hospital is. They know where they are, because sometimes those questions come up and in the panic of the moment, you just might not know that information. So it's really important to get to that information.
So they were, if you know them as You, Me, and the RV, they are officially now Today is Someday. And just amazing. You could check them out on YouTube. But yes, knowing where you're located as well, as Dan said, is so important.
Okay, well, that just about does it for this week's show. We'll be back actually, we're going to be back a whole bunch next week because we will be at the Tampa RV Show live. We'll be on Facebook Live every single day at 1 o'clock. And then we will post those shows to all of your favorite broadcast channels like Apple Podcast or Spotify or Google or whoever you listen to your podcast on. I'm sure the RV Life Podcast is there. So thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Dan Hunt with my incredible wife, Patty Hunt, saying, have a great rest of today.
And an even better day tomorrow.